I'm with David Mandy, who is the President and Chief Marketing Officer of O&M Partners. David, please tell us what you do for O&M Partners and how you create relationships between investors and companies.
I'm a marketing person through and through. I've been telling stories my whole life. I started out in newspaper business, then advertising, and now with company stories. What I do is try to get, I say that we're in the business of starting conversations between investors and presidents of small companies. It's different telling stories for a public company than it is for telling a story about a brand. Public companies oftentimes have a great story, but they don't have a great stock. Mm-hmm. And they think just because they have a great story, a great narrative, that that's going to translate into buying for their investors. But the problem is investors, no matter how good the story, it's going to come down to the numbers. And it's interesting how a lot of nascent, early beginning stories, companies, don't present any financials. And the fact is that the financials, even if you don't have revenue and earnings, matter. You know, you have to tell the tale based on the numbers, even if you're a tiny little company. And so there's a phrase called story stock. In this tough environment to get people's attention, there's just way too many companies trying for too few people in the microcap space. They really need to understand that the only way they're going to break through is by first you have to get into the mind of the person you're presenting to. And unfortunately, they're rather reductive investors. They're thinking about numbers and market cap, shares outstanding, potential for earnings and revenue. And even though you may have the best technology and weave a beautiful story about how you're going to cure cancer and such, unfortunately, you get into those meetings and that becomes, at the beginning, it's more of a show me kind of group. And they want the hard facts.
So with a focus on connecting investors and companies, what kind of stories of these companies do you look for?
Most importantly, I'm looking for the proper management team. It's very hard to know where a story is going to go. It's very hard for us to judge the things on the ground. What we can judge is the management. And we find that the managements that do the best are ones that have had success beforehand. It's not the first time they've built a company. They've built other companies. They've created shareholder value. We find that small publics, they don't really know how to behave like public companies. And there's no Emily Post guide for them. Part of it is making sure that they're laser focused on creating shareholder value. So when I look at a company, the first thing I look at is A, how much are they paying themselves, particularly because they have no revenue and earnings, and secondly, how much does management own? If management's paying them well and they don't own the shares, that means they're not eating their own cooking, and investors don't like that. So they've got to have a stake in the game, and they've got to be focused on creating value, not expenses.
And at this conference, are there any stories that you've heard that can be worth mentioning?
Yeah, I find Theralise and I find the biotech industry now, how technology and science have come together, and particularly in the field of cancer. I mean, cancer up until a few years ago was all about chemotherapy and poison, and they've figured out ways now on a cellular level to target the bad ones and keep the good ones. It's a really exciting time to see what they're doing in that area.
Well, David, thank you so much for your interview.
Thanks for your time.